We've taken the last few months to overhaul our approach to Overflow. We've modified the email newsletter that you receive to include better indexing of topics so you can locate resources that would be useful to you quicker. We also modified some things on the Overflow section of Rob Morgan's website to make it more user-friendly as well. We created this video to walk you through those changes, but we also wanted to correct the common misconception that Overflow is simply a newsletter. What you'll see in this video is that Overflow is much more than that. It actually represents an array of resources at your disposal at any given time. So first we'll look at the email newsletter itself, then we'll jump over to the website to show you how to get the most out of Overflow. We'll take a look at the newsletter fairly quickly since it's mostly self-explanatory. And since, as I mentioned before, Overflow is not actually a newsletter. Overflow is an online resource that's available to you at any time. But we do send out monthly newsletter updates to give you what's actually more of a digest or a table of contents that display the most recent additions to the online resource. So let's walk through a sample newsletter together briefly. Now, the entire newsletter is designed to give you an at-a-glance view of what's new on the website, but everything actually links to the Overflow section of Pastor Morgan's site. As many of you know, Pastor Morgan is a prolific writer, so we typically feature one of his publications. For example, in April, as you'll see in the top left, we're featuring his new resource for churches, Dedicating Your Children to Christ. Clicking on this section will take you directly to the page where it's offered on his site. Now, since Pastor Morgan gets an author's discount on many of his publications, we try to pass along the savings to you in a way that supports the Overflow ministry. But I do want to point out that there's no obligation to purchase anything, and Overflow itself is absolutely free. You'll also see summaries of children's sermon ideas, quotes for the month, and then links to Pastor Morgan's YouTube channel and his website. Moving back up towards the top, you'll notice a featured post or two where Pastor Morgan shares some advice or a particular pertinent story. But based on the feedback that we received, the heartbeat of Overflow is its illustrations. Now, most of the newsletter contains links to these illustrations. We've greatly improved this section to make it more usable. You'll notice we include the title of the illustration, a very short line of text from the illustration, and tags. We use tags to help you identify what topic, scripture, or subject matter any given illustration includes. As with all the other sections of the newsletter, there's a link that will take you directly to any particular entry on the Overflow section of Pastor Morgan's website. So for example, clicking on the Read Full Illustration link on the newsletter takes you directly to his website, to the Overflow section, and to that particular illustration. So again, the newsletter itself is meant to give you an at-a-glance view of what's been recently updated on the website. But next, we'll take a look at the website itself so that you can learn, more importantly, how to use this resource at any time to find stories, illustrations, quotes, or any number of resources we post there for your ministry. When you visit Pastor Morgan's website, you'll notice the link at the top for Overflow free resources. Clicking on this link loads the Overflow Resources page. What's immediately displayed is a list of the most recent entries, so it is possible to simply scroll through to see what's new. But this isn't necessarily the most effective way to find what you're looking for. What you see on the left are 3 sections we'll talk about briefly that help you to filter entries based on what you're really after. The first section on the left is the topic list. These correspond with what you see in the email. Any given month, we add children's sermon ideas, illustrations, ministry help articles, and quotes. If you need help remembering how to use resources, we've also added this Using Overflow Resources link. Now, clicking on any of these links filters down to the entries that fall under that particular category. So for example, if you want to preach a children's sermon, but you don't really have a particular topic in mind, clicking the Children's Sermon Ideas link will do the trick. However, more often you'll probably want to use the search box or the tag list to get a little bit more specific. You can search for any word or phrase and simply press enter from the search box. And the site will then return posts that contain the word or phrase that you searched for. So for example, let's search for the word prayer. Now what's returned to us is a list of posts that contain the word prayer anywhere in the entry. Now this is a useful feature, however there is one small problem. Since we're constantly adding to Overflow, this resource will grow exponentially in coming months. If you're preaching or teaching on the subject of prayer, and you use the search box, it will return every entry that contains the word, not necessarily entries that are specifically about prayer. So if you scroll through the results, one of the things you'll see is a children's sermon idea that contains the word prayer, but it's not really about prayer. So that's where tags come in handy. Now, we tag every single entry when we add it to the Overflow system, and you'll see the tags at the end of any given post. When you click on a tag, you can actually filter for every post that has to do specifically with that topic. So clicking on the tag for prayer will give us entries that are only about prayer specifically. Now, tags show up in 3 different places. They show up within the body of the entries themselves. They show up at the end of each post, and they show up on the left side under the tag cloud. Now, the tag cloud is pretty interesting because words that are actually displayed more often or tagged more often show up bigger and bolder. But clicking on the tag in any of the 3 of these places does the same thing. So I hope this video has been useful to you and is giving you some quick tips to use Overflow more effectively. You don't have to wait on a newsletter to come each month to use the resource, since we'll be adding to it on a regular basis. I hope it will continue to be a blessing to your ministry.